Thank you very much. I will go through my mind map with you together. This is it. This is what we're going to discuss today. Small agenda. Who am I? Scope of this presentation. I tell something about data.overheid.nl. We've got some open data disappointments I'm going to discuss. Something about standardization, data, politics, cultural change, CCAN, an open data store, and a community register. I will go through it quite fast, but these are the points I wanted to discuss with you. First, who am I? I'm Paul Suikerbuik. The pronunciation was quite okay. I'm the project manager for data.overheid.nl, our Dutch data register. And it's also based on CCAN. The organization I'm working for is ICTU. That's an organization we're working for the Dutch Ministry of Interior. So the project is also funded by the Dutch Ministry. You can follow me. My Twitter name is Palinuro. However, it's almost in Dutch. It's funny, but it's almost Dutch, so you need Google Translate to follow me. I do have official pronunciations on Open Data NL, the official stuff, but that's also in Dutch. Well, you're welcome. The scope of my presentation, I will give not a complete overview of the situation of open data in the Netherlands. I got 30 minutes and I've got less, so thank you. But I will share some points we learned working with open data in the Netherlands and the register. I will share some stuff with you. Probably a couple of you already know these faults, these errors, the remarkable things we noticed, but still I think it's interesting for you to share this with you. If you go to the register, it's on the data.overheid.nl. It's based on CCAN. In contrary of the UK, which is have 7,100 data sets, we have 52 data sets. Well, we're getting there. Through Europe and the datacatalogs.org combination, we do connect also with the other data registers, and that's good to have an overview of what's happening in Europe or worldwide. If we see what kind of organizations we have in the register, then you have a couple of cities we're working with, and also through Europeana we have the Amsterdam Museum connected. And with Europeana we will work further on to have more museums on open data register in the Netherlands also. An open data disappointment. Probably know this curve from from Gartner, the hype cycle of Gartner. I think currently in the Netherlands we are here. So we are working on getting more data in it. Everyone is enthusiastic, but we will go into a dip. And this dip means that we will be disappointed about the amount of apps which will be developed and things like that. But we have to go through this to go up and to have develop more apps in the future. But I think if you compare this to the UK situation, you're more here, getting up to have more apps developed and things like that. But what we see is that we have our 50 somewhat data sets in it, and already people are asking why are there no apps on these 50 data sets? So this disappointment will come, and we've got to go through it. Something about standardization. When we started, we didn't do much about standardization because we didn't want to close the opportunity for organizations to get data sets into the register. We want to be as open as possible and without standardization. However, we have to work with standardization, about standardization in coming time. And a couple of aspects we're going to work on. Something about findability, just working on description and tags to increase the findability of the data sets in the register. Formats. Well, the more format, the standardization on the format of the data you have, the easier it is to reuse the data, and the stardom, the 5 stars of Tim Berners-Lee will help us very much in open up the data. And something about licensing. We use a couple of licenses, CC0, CC BY, and things like that. But if you go through the complete list of licensing possibilities of the Open Knowledge Foundation, that's very much. And so much that it's very difficult for a government organization to choose which license is applicable for their situation. So what I would like is that we could go back to just 5 or something like that licensing rules or models. And a problem which will come up, and I was notified by Stuart Dempster. He said, well, the interoperability of licensing matchups is a problem. If you combine different data sets with a different licensing model, you will get into trouble, because what's the licensing model for your end data? Something we have to go through. And at last, interoperability, linked data, semantics, that's also something we have to do something about our standardization. Something about the data, or actually the opening of the data. Well, 2 ways of opening the data. We noticed that raw data is preferably. Raw data, it's the absolute open data, but actually it could be very big. We have discussions with our statistics department, and you see they have multiple gigabytes, terabytes, petabytes of data, and that's a physical problem, how you get this data with the developers, and after that, how is a developer going to work with the data? We do have more and more hard disks, but I'm not quite sure if the MediaMarkt already sells petadata byte disks. I'm not quite sure. Well, a solution for this could be web services and programmable interfaces to your data. But what we already seen there is that some organizations in the Netherlands, they have a web service on the data, but this web service doesn't give the complete openness to the data set. So actually what you create is a way to get into the data, but it's not really open data, because you can't access every aspect of the data. So that's something you should be aware of, that if the web service is so limited in what can be accessed in the data, you're getting into a fundamental problem with open data. So that's something to think about. So a web service, it gives you limitations in the aspects of open data. Politics. We made a huge step here, because our minister has written a letter to the parliament which states that there will be active promotion of open data reuse. A part of they understand that it's a part of open government. You're not allowed to make huge profits of these data. It's free for reuse, so all data is free for reuse. Actually, unless it's explicitly limited. Marginal distribution cost, so only the cost of distribution is allowed to charge. And there are a couple of exceptions, because there are a couple of government organizations which do rely on their budgets for the selling of data. So if you, for instance, our Dutch Kadaster, I'm not quite sure if what's the English name for Kadaster? It's the... Sorry, thank you. They do have a business case on selling the data for 50 million a year. So if you say, okay, your data is open, they really have a huge problem on the funding of their business. So that's accepted, and we're into discussions with those organizations to see how that works in the future. But in the Netherlands, with this letter, it's just 2 months ago this letter is released. It's a huge positive development. We're coming really from a situation where open data is, well, whoa, to a situation where it's embraced by the government also as a good thing to do. So it's a huge step. Something on the cultural change. Well, I only got five arguments here, but I've seen a slide with more than 40, I think it was. So, well, these are part of it. It's too difficult. We don't have arguments like that. Well, we're fully comply to all the feelings about this as everywhere. Something about CKAN. We use CKAN as the registry software. When we started to work with CKAN, we just chose it because of it being used in the US and in the UK. So it made the decision very easy for us. But now we're using it, we realize that it has been a really good choice to use CKAN. And there are a couple of aspects. And one of the aspects is that CKAN makes it very easy to access your data sets. It's fully automated, so you can you don't have to bring your data together to work with the data, but through CKAN you have your register virtually connected within one large database, and that's a very cool thing about CKAN. And another thing we're thinking about is that open data, well, CKAN is a data register. It's not specifically an open data register, it's a data register. And the openness is just an aspect of the data set itself. So we could use it as a data register in a broader perspective than we use it now. And we just say the openness of the data is just an aspect in the data set itself. So it could be used for much more goals than we are using it now. That's a cool feature. And another thing which makes it very easy to work with CKAN is that it's our entrance to what happens in Europe. There's been working on one, from the digital agenda, there's been working on one register for Europe. It's very easy from connecting CKAN instances to create this as a whole for Europe. So that's a cool feature. We are looking at an open data store. A lot of government organizations do have data, but don't have direct URLs to these data sets. So it's very difficult for these organizations to open up the data because they can't create the URLs to the data set. And what they've developed in one of the projects we're working on is an open data store. And this open data store, you can put raw data in it. And it's very easy to get the data out. It's done through for all kinds of API stuff like JSON and things like that. But it makes it very easy to get your data as a government organization published in a way that developers can work with this data. That's one of the plans we're working on at the moment. And there will be a community register. What we've done with CKAN is that we made an official register, which is managed by us, by the government, and getting data into the register is an official procedure. But we noticed from the questions we get, it's a good way to work with a community register. Everyone can put data in the register. And you have also the aspect of that non-governmental data can also be stored in this data register. So it can be broader than the official data register, but the community register will also work as some kind of staging register for the official register. So if a community or if a government puts data into the community register, takes some exercises, how does it work, how does CKAN work, and then they have the feeling, okay, we're ready with the data set now for official publicity, then they can push a button and it will be transferred to the official data register. And we hope that from this working with the community register, we will make it much easier for government organizations to get data into the register. Just being more open and things like that. Well, that's it. That's a short overview of what happens in the Netherlands concerning CKAN, open data, and things like that. If you have questions. Thank you. Yeah?
You said there were 52 data sets already available.
No, they're not. So that's because of our dip we're going through.
Not one.
No, actually, no. No.
Should you have a what would be the ideal app you want? Which one do you want?
Yeah, well, we have apps for Amsterdam. We have a couple of contests in the Netherlands, and we're in the middle of getting those data sets used for these apps. We're trying to get these into the register, but that's a thing we're getting, a process we're in the middle of. But there are a couple of apps which are working on public data, public transport, real-time public transport data. That's in Amsterdam. It's just for one bus line, but it's getting there. We do have some statistics data where an app is written for and things like that. And we're in the process of getting those data sets, which are distributed on partially for USB sticks and things like that, to get it into the data register also. So that's a very short period of time that will happen. Yeah. Sorry. Yeah.
Are you aware of the IATI, the International Transparency Initiative?
No.
Okay. So Netherlands government is also a signatory to that initiative of the OECD.
Okay.
And their main purpose is to publish financial data and how the monies, that's a hallmark for international development or aid, is being utilized by the different governments.
Okay.
And the Netherlands government is also agreeing to publish. It's probably one of the first few governments that are actively trying to publish this data. I was just thinking if you were involved, and you've also, the process of this that you've described seems like the same kind of process that can be used for that initiative as well. So I just...
Cool. More than happy to learn from that. Yes.
Okay. Fine.
Okay. Thank you.
Just want to know if you're interested, if you're involved in it. No?
Not yet. Thank you. Yeah.
Isn't an open data store a contradiction in itself?
And what means?
Either it's open and free, or you have a public-private partnership. So even if I buy an application from that store, I'm still not free to reuse it. So it's not really open data. I purchase the data set and can probably use it internally, but can't do any mashups. Or do you have a license that permits that?
What we see is that a couple of companies, for instance, like Microsoft, who are developing in the Azure platform, developing ways to implement data stores. And well, in that case, the data is open to be reused. And if a government organization will officially bring their data sets to such a store as being the place to get the data, it should be open. If it's not open, in that case, it's not open data. So I agree that with you. Yeah. Okay. One more question? Yeah.
Can you call him a kind of champion in the Netherlands from the government sector? Who's kind of running, if you would like, forerunner?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, it's more on the local level. The four biggest cities in the Netherlands are forerunners on getting their data open, and that's also cool because on local level there's a huge amount of interesting data for citizens. What we see on more on ministry level or on the higher level, it's more statistical data. But open data which comes really close to citizens. It's collected by local governments. That's the most interesting data. So I'm very pleased that these local communities are working on opening up their data. Yeah. Yeah. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.